so much of my life, and if you know me and you've been hearing me preach for years, you know so much of my young life was just wrapped up in the church. How much my church was involved in my life. It wasn't Macedonia Church, but the little churches I grew up in, and I've got so many memories, and some of them are shallow memories, not very deep spiritually. Like one that I think of is we had a deacon in our church who just in the middle of church, in the middle of the services, very small church, he would just get up and walk around. He might get up and check the thermostat right in the middle of the service. Go check the thermostat. He would just do stuff. And if there was ever a Barney Fife deacon, it was him. I mean, he didn't have the gun and a bullet, but he would walk around. What you kids are doing out here? You know, it's just, he checked everything. And our church was set up kind of weird, the way the building was, where we've got our doors here. They were actually stairwells, open stairs to go upstairs to a Sunday school area. And he would just go up there and check during church. I don't know why. What could happen? What could change up there? But one Sunday he got up and went up those stairs, was going up the stairs, and as he was going up the stairs, as Barney Fife, he tripped and fell. He fell, got back up, and fell again on the stairs. That was one of the Sundays I came very close to being beat by my mom because I was going to laugh, and I did laugh because it was funny to me. But like I say, I do have some deeper images and memories from church. Every church had the picture of Jesus in the church somewhere, and I remember looking at that, you know, during Sunday school and stuff, and just think about, is that what Jesus really looked like? You know, maybe think about all the different things about him. My mom had, on her car, had a bumper sticker that said, "Christians aren't perfect, just forgiven." And that may sound like, well, what's the big deal, Greg? That was the first time in my life as a young person, a young Christian, that I realized it was more to Christianity, being a Christian, than just trying to be perfect. That you tried to do more good than you did bad, you know, and you just hoped that enough outweighed, and there was grace. And that simple bumper sticker began me thinking as a young person, there's more to this than just trying to be good. And I've always remembered that. But I think the most memorable for me was a picture that hung in the very first church that we ever went to. It's a picture something like this. May not have been this exact version, but of the Good Shepherd, Jesus reaching down and rescuing a sheep. And that always fascinated me, all the parts of that story, that a shepherd risking his life and going to the effort to save one sheep, and the danger that was part of that, and how good a man this shepherd must be. And that made an impression on me. You know, we have been in a series called I Am for the last 4 or 5 weeks. And what we're doing is going through the book of John in the 7 places that Jesus says, I am. And then he completes that with either an illustration or a name or something, that I am something. And these are so important because they help us to understand who Jesus is and what he wants for us to know about him. Those I ams help us so much. Excuse me. And today we're back in John 10, where we were last week. And Jesus isn't right in the middle of what I call just Jesus being Jesus. He is teaching, he is preaching, he is showing compassion, he's performing miracles, he is healing people. And in the middle of all of that, he's got the religious leaders opposing him. They're hating on him. They want to tear him down. They're threatened by him. So they're constantly debating Jesus and not going along and denying everything that they're seeing. And Jesus is debating them back. And in the middle of this reasoning and this back and forth, he makes a statement and just says, I am the Good Shepherd. Now, this is so much more than just a line in a debate or a discussion. It is a statement of who Jesus is. It is a statement of his authority and why he makes him the Good Shepherd. So we're going to go over and read some verses here in John chapter 10. Then we're going to glean some things from this. John chapter 10, starting with verse 11, says this. I am the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. Verse 13, the man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Now, what I want us to do here for the next few minutes is just look at some of the ways that comes out in these verses of Scripture that says Jesus is the good shepherd and why he deserves our loyalty, our allegiance, and why we should turn to him. What makes him the good shepherd? First one is this. He protects. He protects his sheep. Yeah, Jesus just said he lays down his life not like the hired hand does. He said the hired hand doesn't lay down his life. This is another place where context and what you're reading is so important. This is a direct contrast of how the religious leaders were taking care of the people. And they knew it. And if you'll go and read any commentary, Bible scholars are saying this is a direct tie back to the Old Testament prophecy in Ezekiel, where God sent a word to the people in Ezekiel about the religious leaders of Israel. This is what it says in Ezekiel 34:2. It's a great, interesting place to read, so you might want to read that this afternoon. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who only take care of themselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? And this was a stark contrast of how the religious leaders had neglected the people and hadn't looked after them, but only looked after themselves. And Jesus draws the people's attention to it. And they know exactly what Jesus is doing. And it makes them look bad. I've thought about it so much. Eric's message last week, when he did I Am the Door, and he talked about when the shepherd would bring the sheep in at night, or if they'd have a sheep pen, and they would herd those into that sheep pen, and then the shepherd would either sleep or sit in the doorway of that sheep pen. And that's two-way protection. The sheep didn't go out because he was there to keep them in, and no predator came in because the shepherd was there to keep them out. Two-way double protection. And I've thought about that so much this week. The shepherd was the door. David said it this way in Psalm 139, verses 7 through 10. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. We live in an era where, and you're probably aware of this, there's cameras watching us everywhere. You can't go to a business. You can't go anywhere. You're driving in traffic. You know, there's somebody that's got a camera on us anytime we're in public. Now, for some of you, that creeps you out. You know, you don't like that idea, and it is a little strange. But it's also very comforting if you have a dash cam on your car and you're in a car accident and somebody accuses you that you were at fault. You go, well, let's just look at the videotape. And it proves that you were innocent, things like that. And usually it comes down to if we're doing something wrong or in a place we're not supposed to be, we don't like cameras. But if we're doing what's right and we don't care who sees us there. You see, we can see it as a threat or a comfort. And David here sees that the presence of God, wherever he goes, he cannot go anywhere that's not the presence of God. He sees that as a great comfort to know that God is always going to be there wherever he is. And if you're longing for someone that shows you that kind of care and attention and protection, then you should be drawn to the shepherd. Another point that he makes here, he says he knows his sheep. This makes it a very personal thing. Jesus, when he said, I am the good shepherd, he says, I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Do you struggle with names? Well, if you're young and you're struggling with names, buckle up, Buttercup. It don't get any better. It's not going to get any better. The hard part is, and I see some of you smile, it's not that it's the people you just meet you have a hard time remembering their names. It's somebody that you've known for 20 years, and you go, you can't get that name to come out. And then it comes out 45 minutes later. Oh, I know their name. I met a lady that I had not seen for 40 years last week at the college, MacU. And she came up to me and spoke to me, and I was very nice, cordial to her and talked just a minute. But I didn't know who she was. And I thought about this thing, and then I remembered, that was, I go, oh my goodness. So I looked her up on Facebook, and I've got to now message her and go, hey, it was great seeing you. We had some great times back, and so on going, because, it's kind of embarrassing. I didn't tie together this person we were friends, and I just didn't tie it together. Sometimes my eyesight, I think I've got good eyesight, but you do this thing now where you're out, maybe you're in Walmart across a parking lot or something, you go, is that so? Is that? I think that's so. I think that's them. Because your eyes, it's just not as crisp as they used to be. Let me tell you, Jesus doesn't have that problem. Jesus never forgets your name. Jesus never confuses you with someone else. He doesn't think, I think I know this person. He knows you. You are known by him. Romans 8:15 and 16 says this, for you did not receive a spirit that makes you a slave again to fear, but you received the spirit of sonship. And by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. You can't get any more personal than that. That God says, because of the Spirit, I know who you are. You know who I am. You're mine, and I'm yours. He knows this thing. That's where our validation comes from. You see, if we rely totally on what other people say about us, how they think about us, and they can applaud and cheer for you every day, that is not where our real validation comes from. We cannot rely on our self-validation because we can tell ourselves how great we are or how terrible we are. That's not where our validation should come from. We do draw from those things. That's natural. That's human. But God's validation, he's the one that's going to be right. He's the one that's going to be fair and honest and true. It's the perfect balance that we get is that relationship between a loving father and children that we're validated because of the love of the Father, the love that he shows us, but also that he has discipline for us and has things for us that we need to do. Week before last, I think it was now, went to a funeral for Janice's cousin, Sherry Maurice. And one of the young men who spoke, it was a minister that worked with Sherry as she was a children's minister in Virginia Beach, and it was back during the time that Eric was actually at that church right out of college too. And Jason told the story that they were in camp like that first summer, and Jason had told Sherry, he says, why don't we show a movie this night? I know a great movie we can watch and show the kids. And they had all the kids in the camp there in the cafeteria area, I think it was, and they're watching this movie. You remember the movie Sandlot? It's just, if you've got kids, you've seen it 50 times, But he said this would be a great movie to show the kids. He had totally forgotten that in one scene, the child just yells out a curse word. And he says it just like in slow motion, this curse word comes out, and he's just like, I'm going to have to get the resume worked on, He said, I'm going to get fired for sure. And he says, Sherry just came across the room, put her arm around his waist, and she said, this will not be the last time you mess up. That's all she said. Saying, yeah, you messed up, but it's not the end. And Jason went on to stay at that church for 10 years. Went on to another church as the lead minister and had a very good ministry. But that's somebody coming alongside with that perfect part of I know who you are, and I'm not going to give up on you. See, the Good Shepherd does not give up on us, even on our worst moments. Last one. He prioritizes the sheep. He prioritizes that. John chapter 10, between the verses of 11 and 18, Jesus says 5 times now, I lay down my life. I lay down my life. 5 times. What is more valuable? One good sheep or one good shepherd? And we know it's one good shepherd. That's more valuable than a sheep. A good shepherd is more valuable. And even though a shepherd's job was to protect his sheep, these people that are listening to Jesus, they would understand that a good shepherd would not sacrifice his life for just that. He would defend, he would protect, but he would not. Think of your favorite president in American history. You think of that person. Not one president has ever jumped in front of and took a bullet for the Secret Service agent, because that's not how it's done. They're there to take a bullet for the president. But Jesus turns this whole thing upside down. It makes it the other way around, that he's willing to lay down his life. David, King David, warrior David, writer David, shepherd David, was one of the most admired men in all of Jewish history. He did great things for God and for Israel. But even David allowed someone else to die for him. When he had the affair with Bathsheba and she turns up pregnant, and he knows he's got to cover this up, so he makes sure that her husband is killed on the battlefield and she becomes a widow. He swoops in, marries her, and then covers up that missing time frame there where she got pregnant. Great David didn't die for someone else. He let someone else die for him. There's a term, propitiatory, and don't ever say that word again. You don't have to. But what it means is this. When we think about this in the religious, with Jesus in thought in mind, is that someone has to step in and appease the anger, the wrath, to make things right between a more powerful entity, a powerful person, in this case, God's justice, God's mercy, and mankind. And Jesus goes in with I guess that's where we get the word proposition. He steps in and says, I will die in their place. Does this take the place of the guilt of their sin? And it does. So Jesus saying, I am the good shepherd. He knows what he's talking about. And people listening to that day when Jesus said these things, they understood a good shepherd. They knew what a good shepherd was, but they had never heard anything like this. Father Maximilian Kolbe was a minister in Germany during World War II, and he was a part of the German resistance, the underground resistance there in Germany. He was eventually arrested, sentenced to prison for being a sympathizer. He then was transferred to one of the most famous concentration camp, Auschwitz. And it was while there, he viewed every day he had there as an opportunity to serve God through helping the prisoners there. In July of 1941, one prisoner escaped. And what the Nazi guards would do to punish for an escapee was they took 10 prisoners, chosen randomly, and were put in what they called the starvation bunker. They were put in there with no food, no water, and they just died a slow death. And they randomly picked out on that day 10 different men, and it just so happened that the man beside Father Kolbe, they pointed to him, and the man began to weep openly. Weep for his wife and his children and what would happen to them. And Father Kolbe, he stepped forward and asked the guard, he said, can I take this man's place. And the guard was like, whatever. And he allowed him to. And so those 10 men went into the starvation bunker. And something happened that was different than all the other times. The prisoners on the outside, they said that they heard singing through the days. Christian hymns singing. All 10 eventually died of starvation. But in those last days of his life, he was able to bring comfort to 9 other men. But do not forget the one that he saved his life. That man survived Auschwitz, lived to be 95 years old, and everywhere he went, he told the story of Father Colby. Tell me, when you look at this picture, when you see this picture of the Good Shepherd, that you're not drawn to something there. That when you think about what the Good Shepherd has done, that there's not some drawing to your soul to that. Whether it be that you long the protection of someone, to know that someone cares enough about you that they protect you, that they're the door. The shepherd becomes the door to guide and guard your life, to be there no matter what, or to be personally known. It is one of the deepest desires of people, no matter who you are, is to be known, is to know and to be known, to love and to be loved. And if that's got to be a draw on our soul, that the Savior of the world knows us and never forgets us. Are you drawn to the fact that you are a priority to Jesus? That you and I are the one that he talks about in another place where he talks about being the good shepherd, that he left the 99 to go find the one. We are the one. That we are that kind of priority to the shepherd, the good shepherd.